All right, this is a good time to pause, take a time out, and let's talk about file paths for a second. So it's important to understand basically where files exist on your computer and how to reference those locations. And there's two main approaches that we use to do this. We have one approach called the absolute path, where we reference the full path, and we also have one called the relative path. Okay? And how these differ is the absolute path will always contain the full expression of the location that the file exists. For example, I have this planes file right here, right? And if I wanted to see the full absolute path to that data set or that file on my computer, I could get that using the OS. Remember, the OS standard library allows us to work with our operating system and get certain paths, right? And so I can see that the full path to this starts at my user root location all the way down to desktop, workspace, down to the training directory, down into a UC directory, then into a UC BANA 6043 for this class, and so on, all the way to that file. Okay, so an absolute path is the full reference from where you basically where your profile starts on your computer down to the directory in the location of that file. Okay. Now, often, and we can use this absolute path to pass that into read_CSV, and we can import as well. But most often you see what we call the relative path. And actually what we just did when we imported planes over here in the previous section, we are using a relative path. Okay, so relative path is built upon your current location, where you are operating out of. So for example, if your directory looks like this, where you're in some project and you're in a notebook here and you have planes.csv in the same location, like the same level in that directory, then we can just import that like we did, right? So for example, I'm in this notebook. I actually have not even named this notebook. It's this untitled one that's highlighted here. At the same level in my directory, I have plain CSV. So I'm able to reference that CSV simply by calling the name. I don't have to pass in the full absolute path to reference that location, right? And that allows me to import that data. Now, lots of times in a project, we'll have our notebook at a certain location, but we'll have all our data contained in a subdirectory. For example, if I look over here in Jupyter, you can see I have a subdirectory with data, and I have a planes file in there as well, right? So if I wanted to access that file, import that data, right, then what I would do is I would actually say I want to access the data directory that's equivalent in my current location, put a slash there, and then the planes.csv file in that location. And if I run that, I'm not even going to assign that to anything. We'll just see that it will, in fact, reach into this data directory and access this plain CSV file and import that. Now, sometimes we have a different layout. Sometimes we have basically within a project, we have a directory where we hold all our source code or our notebooks. And then in another directory, I have the data, right? So for example, I have in my directory layout over here, I have this SRC, right? It stands for source code. You see this quite a bit in companies or organizations where they contain their source code. So in here, I have this notebook. It's called importing, right? And so say now I'm operating out of this directory. But what I need to do is I need to reach back up into this level and then go down into the data directory to access my planes, right? So now I can do that. So first of all, I want to go ahead, import pandas as PD. And then what I want to do is I'm going to do read_CSV, but I need to go up one directory and then go down into the data directory and then go ahead and get planes.csv. Make sure I put that all in quotes. Whoop. And then that will reach up from my current location up into this directory, the main project directory. And then I'll be able to go down into the data directory and access that location, that file.